Looks like Mother's going to be stuck in the simulation forever because the show looks like it's not going to be renewed and looks like no other streaming service wants to pick it up. But we're here to talk about the beautiful VFX and visuals in season 2 of Raised by Wolves. Spoiler warning.
You brought that back pretty well. I'm like, boy, what a downer, bummer intro. Everyone, welcome back to As I with Nick and John. So if you have been around the channel at all, you know that we really love Raised by Wolves. We love where it's been headed. And like Nick said, we are sad that it looks like it's not going to be getting picked up anywhere else, but we still have some wonderful things and some highlights really from season 2 to really talk about and enjoy. And in this case, we're talking about the special effects and visual effects combining to give us a really great result. And one of the most kind of biggest compliments I can give these is some of these all the effect shots look great in season 2, I think. Nick and I thought the design for the tank was a little bit weird. It looks like a floating monolith, but that's a complete design choice. But the visual effects and special effects were wonderful. It really sold the universe really well. And there is a lot of pure 100% visual effects shots on objects and characters and creatures that you would not have known if you weren't showing a visual effects breakdown that those were completely fabricated. And so we're going to dig into some of that. We're going to dig into some different aspects. It's going to be a fun conversation.
And just want to shout out our storyboard artist friend Josh, who worked on the show. It's an amazing interview. If you want some inside scoop of behind the scenes stuff and storyboard and storytelling and how Ridley Scott was involved, or if he wasn't involved, or why they did this and why they did that, go watch that video. I highly recommend it. Josh is super talented, super cool, down to earth guy. Yes, I highly recommend it. And the cool
thing is he boarded some of the really memorable moments in the show where he had board it however you want, and you don't often get creative freedom like that. And he did some really cool stuff.
And
so
in color.
Definitely check that out. Yeah, and in color storyboards. You don't get very. Anyway, definitely check out that video. It's a great interview. Nick had a wonderful conversation with him, so you guys check that out. So Nick, did you want to start a particular shot, or we just want to jump all over?
You know where I want to start? With the mer creatures. Because that was spoilers, just in case, again, spoilers, because we are going to be spoiling this show. Sorry, there might not be a season 3, but anyways, let's just jump into it. Okay, so there's in a very iconic scene where there's leeches on the mer people that flop around, and there's also a very iconic.
They look like tigers. All right, anyway, continue on.
And then and then there's also the scene where they take the baby, or the mother sea monster creature thing takes the baby away. And the baby's also fully CG. John, isn't that crazy? The baby's fully CG.
Of all the amazing, crazy effects we got on the whole season, those baby scene grossed me out. I'm not going to lie. All right. I don't need to see natural. Anyway, but that baby, the lighting, the rendering on it just looks absolutely flawless. And it's just great to see that breakdown. They show, I don't know if it was a 3D scan of a baby they did. It looked like they had reference photos. I don't know if they modeled it based on that or they actually scanned, the baby photogrammetry or whatever it might be. If you guys aren't familiar with photogrammetry, it's you basically so if you wanted to turn me into a 3D model, if I was able to stay perfectly still, you would take a camera or you would have a bunch of cameras set up, like sometimes hundreds of cameras, and you would take images of all different angles and you feed this into a program. There's a Metashape. There's some different photogrammetry based programs that you can take photos and turn them into a model. I don't know if that's how they made the baby mesh, because it's if you see the polygons for the model, it's a very detailed mesh. But man, when they finished doing that, it looked so good.
Yes.
Like you would not know at all.
Like it looked better than the sea monster.
And I'm going to say that looks
more
like
realistic.
A mad baby. That baby does not look like a happy baby. It's like when they're showing the turnaround, it's like,
I mean, would you be happy if your mom was trying to throw you into the ocean?
One mom for another. Moses.
Biblical show, right? Moses. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then we have the beautiful sea monsters. Beautifully designed, very creepy looking. You can tell they were maybe humans once. Spoilers, just in case. But it was just such a cool sequence. Even though I did make fun of like, how did it get up there so quick if it flops around and all that stuff. I did have fun with it during the episode, but visually it's stunning.
Oh yeah. Stunning. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they serve their purpose wonderfully. There's these things that are repulsive to you at first, but then when you kind of start to get a little bit more backstory as the show goes on, you're like, oh, well, I can actually see that progression potentially, happening. And so visually they were designed wonderfully, but the visual effects are great too. And one thing that I loved about, we haven't talked about all these shots yet, is that they have very great on-set props and acting. They just use the visual effects to enhance or animate those things that would be a static mask otherwise. Yeah. So when the mer monsters, whatever you want to call them, are crawling up, there is a person in a pretty convincing suit that if they didn't do more effects work on it, it wouldn't be up to the level of what they needed to do. But it's a good, very convincing like prop as far as props go on set. It's not like they have if you guys have seen any of the breakdowns for His Dark Materials, which is another show we've covered on here, they'll have just like little cardboard cutouts of like the animals sometimes, and other times they'll have really detailed kind of accordion type puppets. But the masks that some of the characters are wearing, or like the mermen that they're going on, they look pretty darn detailed. They're just not as, you don't have the sheen of the water on them, or you don't have the animated faces. And so they'll expand on it, but they have that great reference on how the light's going to fall on them, and, the general shape and curvature, and the actors and actresses are going to have something to act against. Sometimes they were full visual effect shots, but a lot of time they had something in the scene, which was really cool.
And I think that's a perfect jumping point to jump to Viral, the Hannibal
Lecter, that's right. She took off her mask. My favorite is like when she was about to say, "Hello, Clarice." It's like, oh, so much fun. But yeah, so she, I thought her mask was great, but I think it was just a still mask. I don't think it would have animated unless they did the visual effects work. And obviously they took the look further, but what a great reference to have on set, even if it's almost like a Darth Vader mask that doesn't animate at all. You know exactly what the lighting's going to be like, catching that surface, generally speaking, aside from, the animated lips moving and things like that, because you actually have something on set that has that same curvature and movement. So I really appreciate the lengths they went to that, but man, did they take that way further after that.
Man, and that whole action sequence is still probably one of the best action sequences of season 2 for sure. It's just so good. It's right up there. Season 1, I love the first episode when she boards the ship and she's just like popping everyone like in the spaceship. But like this is just like slice, 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 So
yeah,
good.
she was she had a good arc as a character. Like she played a very important role in some of the major characters, camping and things like that. But oh man, you would just see someone just go full crazy. I'm like, oh, here we go. Nick goes, oh yeah, John, we're going to talk about your favorite scene. I'm like, oh, you mean Miss Stabby Pants? It's like, oh.
It was a great sequence. And, this show, I think why the VFX work for this show is there's not a lot going on. It's pretty simple for the most part. No, I mean not like Avenger level going on. You know what I mean? Like Avengers, like
visuals and things like that?
Yeah, visuals.
I thought you were talking about story. I'm story-wise, it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. All right.
I'm talking about visually, like, like Avengers Endgame, you're just like, you're overloaded. It's so cool because I talked to the storyboard artist about this. And what's so beautiful about Raised by Wolves is how, not simple it is, but it's like you don't need 1,000 snakes in the sky to like face off Mother. You know what I mean? Like you just need the one snake and it's so strong. It reminds me of like Iron Man 1. Every like VFX shot in that movie is so rememberable because obviously it wasn't happening the whole time and there's just like certain moments, but they were just so strong. Like when he's flying with the jet plane, when he's facing off with the tank, you know what I mean? And it's just like there's just moments in the Iron Man, and like I feel like that's what this show, like I can think of moments and just like those moments are so strong visually in my brain too because they just stand out.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably for a couple reasons. I think this season 2 had a pretty healthy budget, but obviously not an unlimited budget like we don't know for sure, but that we associate with, like, say, an Avengers movie where there's just so much money, almost like Stranger Things season 4. It's like there's so much happening because they have such a big budget now. And I don't know if they feel obligated they have to spend all that money, but here they have a good budget to make things look really polished and nice. But at the same time, they have to pick and choose their moments and what's important to making this shot work. And, I haven't seen Aquaman. I know that people were like, yeah, the visual effects in this movie are crazy. There's like, sharks flying in the background. There's dinosaurs. I'm like, why? Okay. Now I haven't seen the movie, so maybe it'd make more sense if I did, but I'm like, why? Why do you need to have all that? Whereas here, everything that they've spent time polishing and looking really good is crucial to the scene. Sometimes they are like doing set extensions and you know, you would say maybe that's not essential, but at the same time that's still drawing you in.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I think that everything they're doing is essential. It's the same way that Jurassic Park, the first one, holds up so well because there's just, all right, these are going to take us a long time. We're obviously in a different space in the visual effects industry then and now, but they're like, all right, this T-Rex is our focus, so we're going to put our emphasis on that. We're going to get everything else looking as good on set as we can. We'll notch it up, enhance it a little bit if we need to, but we're not just going to throw in endless stuff to like distract us. You know, the things that they're doing are the things that we're focusing on. I really appreciate that. And I think that's one of the things I loved about Raised by Wolves is it feels like an older type of science fiction show. And I think partially it's because they've always focused on the things that I think are important to the story. And I think that's one of the reasons I've always liked it.
Yeah. And the lighting's really beautiful too. Like in the whole sequence with the leeches. And when Paul, like, it's like full on alien. I don't want to say alien, but like, very intense lighting, beautifully like framed. Storyboard artist Josh, but like, it's just go check out that video. We break down that sequence, but now we got to break down a crazy sequence with number 7. I mean, from eating a tree transformation to duking it out with mother.
Yeah, you know what? Those are, and the cool thing. So like when Mother goes all the way up into like, you know, the atmosphere, atmosphere, like into space.
So beautiful.
It's only a couple shots and it's not that long. And you're like, okay, they spent a lot of money creating that scene and they didn't spend much time there, but it's one of those, you know, kind of highlight moments that you're building up to. And that's why it works well. If they had then said, all right, we you know, made this whole environment, let's spend like 5 more minutes in space. Yeah, it wouldn't have worked the same, you know. And I remember George Lucas in an old film, I think it was like called The Saga Behind the Saga. It was like making of the first 3 Star Wars movies. He was saying, it's like, yeah, a lot of people, they get too attached to their visual effects or special effects to where the story becomes a sideshow at that point, and they don't move through the environments fast enough. And he was saying, like, in the first Star Wars movies, hey, I moved through Hoth and then we were on to the next place, and I moved through this and we were on, you know, the planet of Endor. Before that we were on Hoth, you know. So they keep the scenery changing, and that's why that space scene, those few shots stand out so well. I was like, wow, that was a completely different view of things that we got before. And it's just such a beautiful shot. Now that's not specifically what Nick was talking about, but we're talking about number 7 shots in general.
I mean, number 7 looked beautiful up there too, with like the whole tentacles coming out, and he wanted to like, I mean, everything was just, that whole sequence was beautiful. Even the eating of the tree shot was beautiful too.
Yeah. And again, you know, that was a really heavy visual effects moment, but also crucial to the story this whole time. What's with the tree? What's going on here?
What's with the tree? I'll tell you what's with the tree. Azar.space. Go get our tree shirts.
That was not planned. I'm sure you can tell that was really corny. But anyway, but, you know, eating of the tree, like, okay, how is this, you know, thing going to weaponize? They ended up calling it. But how is this thing going to turn into this, you know, kind of weapon or sword or whatever you want to call it? And when we got that answer, you're like, whoa, that's a trippy, crazy idea, but visually it was expressed and shown really, really well. And I love Nick. I hope I'm not talking too much.
No, I'm loving this. I'm just like,
I love how you know, they had talked about in, I think, one of the making ofs for season 2, like, yeah, you know, up until you have, you know, the snake actually contacting the tree, it's a real physical tree. And I think they even did some, you know, some type of controls where they made the leaves fold up, right? I think, I might be wrong, but then they switched to a full CG tree, obviously, you know, at the latter parts of the snake consuming it. So it's just some really cool ideas and thoughts. And again, this goes back to an interview with Josh, where you have to have those storyboards to make that stuff work. You have to know exactly what we're going to see. So we're only going to work on the details of what we're going to see and, you know, plan around those shots. And it just, they executed it really, really well.
So beautiful. And it's something we probably haven't talked about enough because it wasn't really on frame enough. I just thought of it right now. We know this series so well, guys. I can just bring up every moment. We'll be like, boom, boom, boom.
No. Yeah, but Nick can. Yeah. I love the series, but I wouldn't say I can remember everything.
Don't want to jump too far off topic, John, but I just want to talk about the trust really quickly and how beautiful that whole designed and visual. I mean, obviously we know it's a visual effects shot, and you know, it could be a little bit of practical and a little bit of visual effects. I don't even remember looking at anything behind the scenes, but I wanted more of the trust because of how awesome it looked.
It was a really cool visual design. And beyond that, it was just a cool story concept idea. You know, we have these ideas of, okay, this AI, you know, number 7 is going to be turned into a weapon, you know, even though it has this bio, you know, organic aspect to it, it's also mechanical, and, you know, machinery is typically created to serve a purpose. And so you have this thing and the trust that is supposed to be able to make much more detached, proper judgments. But how do you depict something like that? And I just love the idea that it has this organic, you know, bio feeling kind of liquid or clouds or whatever it is that's kind of part of it, but then it's clearly a strong mechanical element as well. And it was one of my favorite things in the show. They didn't really talk about much more, just kind of came and went. Whereas for me, I thought that could have been a great character, but at the same time, visually, yeah, like you're saying, it was depicted wonderfully. And even when it's kind of shutting down and you're seeing this almost like bioorganic matter just kind of fading away or losing its you know, kind of firing of the electrons or whatever you want to call it, it's just really neat to visually see how that was depicted.
Yes. And then the other thing I really liked visually too was the growth of grandmother. The way like the skeleton was like forming and stuff. I know it wasn't like anything, but the design of it, obviously someone modeled that in 3D, and the way the fluid just kind of melted all over it. I was just like, that's super sick when it just comes from a design perspective too. Like that's just super clean.
Yeah, you can. And so Nick and I, you'll hear us talking about, I always rave about the particles and simulations that people do in these shows, because it's something I'm not very knowledgeable in, but I know it's extremely difficult to do and look really, really convincing. But you can run all the simulations that you want. If the design of the character doesn't work, then that's going to fall flat. But just the cool, like kind of geometrical, kind of hexagonal shapes that make up, you know, grandmother's body before she's kind of re-put together, whatever you want to call it. And then, you know, we would call it milk, but we know it's not. But, you know, the milk kind of going, and we're just going to get that fuel blood. You know, just getting to see those scenes is really, really neat and really, really cool executed. But again, I think the thing that Nick and I really enjoyed about this series as a whole, even if we don't get to continue it visually, you know, like they've said, they want to deliver the rest of the story, whether it's in a graphic novel or whatever it might be. They want to get the story. And I'll still be interested in hearing that because just the story concepts are so good and the design is so good. Now, are they going to have the same budget to have people come up with those cool designs if they try and deliver it another way? I don't know. But grandmother, you know, going through the different stages of being reanimated, I think is a really, really cool depiction. And the fuel blood and how that's absorbed and all that is just a really, really cool example of that. All right, guys, so let us know down below if this is the end of Raised by Wolves as far as a series. We had a really good season. I think that makes it hurt even more that, hey, we're at a high point and we wanted to see it continue. But at the same time, we have a lot of really cool things to appreciate and a lot of hard work on everybody's part, from pre-production, like the interview with Josh that Nick did that was wonderful, to production, to post-production. Just a lot of cool thought and love put into all of this. And so we'd love to continue and hear the conversations. What were your favorite moments from season 2, visual effects and special effects wise, but maybe even story wise? Again, you know, we've been theorizing what we thought was going to happen in season 3, and maybe we will get that story. Just because they said it doesn't look like it's going to get picked up right now doesn't mean it's not going to. Things do happen. It is a very popular IP, and that might have been one of the reasons it's hard to continue. It's like, all right, whoever would pick that up would need a pretty good budget to keep the quality level high. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But in the meantime, let's appreciate what we did have here, and we'd love to hear the conversation of what you really enjoyed so much about season 2. Obviously, we're talking about visual effects, special effects, but anything in general, let us know down below. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next Azar Flying in Space. I can't think of it.
Number 7 eats a tree.
Number 7 eats a tree. Number 7.
Go to Azar.space for tree shirts.